Hello, math people. Welcome to Analytical Rubric Modeling for Math. I'm your host today, Katie Seago. I know we are talking about a subject that is probably something that math teachers don't necessarily want to do, and I totally get it. What I hope today is through this modeling, you will see how this might benefit you and your students in your classroom. So please just bear with me, as my mom would say, humor me for a little bit, and we'll see if we can make some better connections for math today. Before we really get started, I'd like for you to make sure that you have these documents on hand today. They all can be found in the packet that you received in our early release day on February 18th, or you can also find them in your professional development page, Canvas, for each school. The first document is this one right here, the Identifying Important Performance Qualities. We will also use criteria and rubric ideas. This is where the 4 criteria are listed with traits that go along with them. You will need figures J4 and J6, 4 types of criteria with sample questions, and then descriptive terms for differences in degree. And finally, you'll need a rubric. In preparing to write your rubric, the very first thing that you need to do is refresh your memory of what your transfer goal is. When your students walk away, what are you expecting them to have been able to transfer or to master? In this math unit, we're using the 8th grade Unit 3 geometry. Their focus or their transfer is highlighted. Students will be able to independently use their learning to apply mathematical knowledge to analyze and model mathematical relationships in the context of a situation in order to make decisions, draw conclusions, and solve new problems. Since this does seem fairly general, and we want it to be so that they can apply it to new situations, just so that I can do a better job in writing this rubric, I'm going to take a look at what the understandings are as well. So I'm going to pause for a minute, pause the video, read through those 3 bullet points that are highlighted, please. One thing that I think you should know if you are not an 8th grade teacher is that this unit has multiple performance tasks. So the performance task that we're actually going to take a look at today will not cover all of these understandings because there will be additional things that students are being asked to do on other tasks. This performance task actually has 2 pages. So please pause the video, read the first page, play the video, read the second page, and then we'll get back together. One thing that I have left out of this video are the 2 pages where the students actually have to put in their dilation. So there's a place for them to have it on a letterhead, and there's a place for them to have it as the logo. So now that we've refreshed our memory what students are being asked to do, both through their transfer and through the performance task, our job is to now start thinking about what is important, what traits are important for my students to be able to show their mastery through. So this first part is done individually. In order to think about which traits are necessary, I'm going to use my little that is called the Criteria and Rubric Ideas document. You all have a copy of this, and it's also available electronically through Canvas. So I'm actually going to go through all 4 columns. At this point, I am not paying attention to what's underneath content, process, quality, result. It doesn't really matter right now. Later, that will help me group things. Now, personally, when I'm going through by myself, I don't write my words on the document that says identifying important performance qualities. I just highlight them. That's a preference. For today's purposes, I'm going to go ahead and actually write them on the document. Okay, so part 1, individually list the important qualities or traits for, I'm just going to call this dilation right now. Oops. And individually, by myself, I'm going to think about what is important here. So going through the first column of content, I'm going to see which words jump out at me when I think of dilation. So I think the first thing is that I really want to make sure that it's accurate. Accuracy is important to me. I want to make sure that they've been complete with their work. I want to make sure that it's correct. Now you might think, hey, wait a minute, accurate, correct, they're the same thing. Yeah, they are, but it's a word that jumped out at me, so I'm going to go ahead and include it. They have to explain how they got what they got, how they dilated the object. Needs to be logical. I expect it to be precise. It's one of my process standards. Okay, for me, that's all in that column. So I'm going to go through a process right now. I think their process should be flawless. I think that it should be methodical. That's it for that column. The quality column now, skimming through, I feel like this should be smooth. Okay, that's it from that column. And then finally the result column. I want their work to be effective. I want them to be able to have done what they were supposed to have done. I want to make sure that they've met the standards that I've set forth for them. And that's it. So with these traits now, my job is to share with my PLC. And as a PLC, we'll determine which words end up going down below. So as a PLC, we'll sit down, we'll share out, we'll determine which words are most important. All right, so we're going to take a look at this and just say these are the words that our PLC has determined are the most important traits that students would have when doing this performance task, when doing the dilation of the logo. So we've determined that it's important for them to be accurate, that they can explain it, that they are precise, methodical, and effective. When I look at where these words fall into my categories, into my criteria, I see that accurate and explained and precise are all part of the content. Methodical is the process. And then effective is the result. Okay, so now I'm starting to get a little bit into the, as a math teacher, why do I care? I know that a lot of times you guys provide partial credit for something. So that's where we're looking at the difference between content and process, because their answer might be wrong, but their process might be right. They've just made a computation error. So this is where my rubric will help me out a little bit and allow me to give that student the partial credit. We'll get back to more of that later. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to try to think about what these words are really meaning then. So when I'm talking about the content being accurate and being explained and being precise, I'm really thinking, I think overall, I'm thinking about accuracy. So I'm just going to jot this down just as a note to myself, really, when I move on to the rubric writing. The process, I really don't know any other word to use for that. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep that at process. That's the process they follow to solve the problem. And then the result is, now that they've done these things, they've done the process, they've worked with the content, were they able to explain it? That's their explanation, the student's explanation of how they did, how they could prove that that logo is a true dilation. I'm now ready to start writing the rubric. So what I'll want to do is, keeping out the document that I've just worked on, I'll want to also pull out this document here. Now, figure J4, we've not really spent a lot of time with. We talked about it in the professional development on February 18th. This figure J4, 4 types of criteria with sample questions, is something that will be helpful for you if you start to feel stuck. Sorry, it's not very clear on the screen right now. But this is a place where I'm not really sure where my focus is, or I've only come up with a couple of words that I think are important, traits that are important. Go to this list, this document, and this can help you maybe work through some of those just by the questions that it's providing. When you write your rubric, however, figure J6 is the one that will be very helpful because it gives you those differences in degree words. So what does a 4 look like versus what a 1 looks like, and everything in between. So have this document out as we're working through right now. It's time for some rubric writing. Very first thing I want to think about at the top of here is, how are my students demonstrating their understanding? Ultimately, I think they're using explanation. I think they're explaining here. So I'm just going to jot this down. This isn't necessarily something that your students have to see. This is kind of like your rough draft right now. The specific product or performance that they'll be creating is that dilation of the logo. And then I'm going to start transferring just a little bit of my information from earlier, from my previous document. So thinking about my categories here, my criteria, the very first criteria that's being used is content. And I stated that I really thought that that was zeroing in on accuracy. So I'm going to go ahead and put that right here in the box. Okay, my next column of focus is the process. So for student understanding, I'm just going to write down understanding. Understanding, if I can type, process. Bear with me here for a second as I get this program to do what I want it to do. It's not going to look beautiful, but it will serve our purposes. And the last column of my focus is the result, and really I'm focusing in on the explanation. Are they able to explain their proof that this logo is a dilation? Obviously today, I'm not really worried about this column, the far column. I only have 3 things, 3 criteria. So it's okay if you're only using 3. Maybe if you just start with 2, that's fine too. It's what you're comfortable with at this moment and what you think will accurately assess your students' understanding. For now, I'm going to skip over the weights section. I don't want to worry about that, this section right here, until I'm completely finished with putting in my information. So it's time to start working. Looking at accuracy and thinking about content. So going back to my original document, are my students accurate? Are they being able to explain? Are they precise? So I think the first degree of differences that will work best for me is simply accuracy. So my stem says completely accurate. I like that. I'm going to keep it, but I'm thinking about what is completely accurate. So it's the dilation. So dilation is completely accurate. The logo is dilated correctly. Remember, this is just my rough draft. So if I want to come back later to make some changes, absolutely I can do that. My next section down. What's the dilation in degrees of accuracy? It's generally accurate. So dilation is generally accurate. There are minor inaccuracies that do not affect the overall logo. I've combined a few things here. That's okay, you can do that. Okay, next section. Looking down at my degrees of accuracy, the next one's inaccurate. So I'm going to say dilation is inaccurate. Numerous errors, if I can spell here, detract from the logo. And then finally, there are major inaccuracies. So dilation has major inaccuracies. There are significant errors throughout dilation of logo. Oh, doesn't quite fit there. There we go. Okay, I'm feeling okay with that right now. It might be something as I'm working through the other ones that I come back and change, but for now, I'm good with the way it is. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the understanding process section. I'll go ahead and change our ink here, or our font color, so that we can see the difference between the columns a little bit more easily. Okay, so understanding the process. I really want them to understand how dilation works. So this is where I'm looking at that process. Maybe their computation was off with the accuracy, but maybe they really do understand how it's supposed to work. They know that method that they're supposed to use. That's what I'm assessing here in this column. So when I'm thinking about a process, I really think about, I guess, their degree of understanding is where I'm going to start here. And then maybe something I end up not being comfortable with, but for now I'll try it and see how it works. So let's see. My degrees of understanding starts with thorough and complete. So I'm going to use both of them actually. Thorough and complete understanding of the dilation process. My 3 then would be substantial. So I'm saying substantial understanding of dilation process. Maybe you guys would like the word method better than process. You can change that terminology. That makes you more comfortable. My next one down is partial or incomplete. So partial understanding of dilation process. And then finally, misunderstandings or serious misconceptions. So I'm going to go with serious. Serious misconceptions of dilation process. So here you can see how a student would receive credit on their process even if their content was incorrect or their accuracy was incorrect. All right, we're going to move on to our last column, which is the explanation. Here's where students are being asked to explain how that clear proof of the logo being a dilation. So they've done all the work. Now can they explain how it happened? So when I'm thinking about explanation, I'm thinking about their degrees of clarity. Are they able to explain really what happened? So those are the differences in degree that I'm going to be using here. Okay, move this over here a little bit. So the first one says exceptionally clear. When I'm thinking about the logo dilation, them explaining it, so I'm going to say that the logo dilation proof is exceptionally clear. They're able to make those connections. Next one down. The logo dilation proof is generally clear. Next one down, logo dilation lacks clarity. Let's see, logo dilation proof. Now, as math teachers, you might think that you want more detail in here, and if that's the case, you are certainly able to do that. I'm just doing kind of like that skeleton, the bare bones here, but if there are specific things that you're looking for with that proof, then those could be stated within these cells. The last one, I'm going to say that the logo dilation proof is unclear. Might even say it's impossible to follow. Okay, so I'm done with my rough draft here of this rubric. The next thing that I want to do before I go any further is to take a look at all of the fours, look across on the fours, and ask myself, if a student can do these things in the 4 range, in the expert range, can they or are they showing mastery of the transfer goal? Looking back at what my transfer goal is, let's see if I can find it here. Students need to be able to apply mathematical knowledge to analyze and model mathematical relationships in the context of a situation in order to make decisions, draw conclusions, and solve new problems. So reading straight across, dilation is completely accurate, logo is dilated correctly. There's thorough and complete understanding of the dilation process. And then the logo dilation proof is exceptionally clear. I feel like that does show that a student can master that transfer goal. Again, like I stated before, you might want to go in and put in a little more detail in each of these cells that would provide even more feedback. Right now, I'm going to say that that's good. So it's time for me to start looking at the weights. What I'd like to do then is think about what is most important to me. In these 3 categories, which one should be weighted more than any of the others? And right now, I'm going to say I think that's accuracy. So I'm going to weight that times 2. You could weight it as more. Maybe you guys would choose a different column. And I think the other 2 are equally important. So I'm just going to keep these times 1. Now, I know you guys are math people, but to make your world a little bit easier, I would recommend that you're putting these points in each of the cells. So the accuracy 4 would actually be worth 8 points, the 2 times 4. The 3 would be worth 6, and then 4, and then 2. And then these would be just straight values. But I think that would make your end job easier when you're going to add everything together. In talking with Taryn, there was something that We kind of had this aha moment that I thought that I would share with you guys. I want you to think when you're using a rubric, this is not the only thing that you can mark on. You can still mark on your students' papers. In fact, most people do. And then they still transfer a score. They circle which section their student is scoring in. So for example, I might say, okay, you scored here, but mathematically you were not 100% correct. So you got to be here on this. You were able to explain it very clearly. So I'm going to put you here. So what this does is it sends a message to the student on their continuum of learning. You know, we've got novice up to expert. The students have a visual representation of where they're falling in each of these categories. It's providing more concise or precise feedback to them, which is something that can be very valuable. Just like not everybody, just like students they're not always math-minded. So this gives them a way to receive feedback that's not quite in a traditional math way. Okay, so that wraps up our rubric example for math. A couple of things before I completely shut this off here. Just a reminder for you. Trust the process. The process that I've just taken you through, it's a journey. See our little sailboat with the water there in the corner. Isn't that beautiful? It's there for a reason. It will help you through. I think if I were you I've looked at some of the springboard rubrics that have been provided, and to me, those would be difficult to use because you have number 1B and 2C and 4A go to this column here or this row here, and that would be very cumbersome. I think the model that I've just shown you is simplified a little bit and might make your bridge into use of rubrics a little bit easier for you guys. Don't forget, like I said earlier, that those analytical rubrics, they provide feedback to the students, but they can also provide feedback to you and give you some data where you can see where your students are following on their continuum of learning and understanding. As always, if you need help, please reach out to us. We are here to help you. Shelley or I can provide any additional assistance, walk you through the process if you would like. Just let us know. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.